Once Piali gives us a thumbs up. Okay, great. We want to welcome everybody to the Business Roundtable this evening. We're glad you're all here. We hope that you're going to find this time well spent. I know that I do. I'm Nancy. I have my colleagues Piali and Cynthia here with me as well. And we're super glad to welcome all of you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to turn it over to Nat, who's going to introduce our guest tonight, Jatita Hernandez, and start the discussion. So welcome.
Well, again, thank you very much, Nancy, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to our monthly Business Roundtable Showcase. And tonight we're showcasing another one of our Howard County women entrepreneurs and visionaries here, Jatita Hernandez. And she's got two fantastic companies, and I don't know how she does it, but we're going to find out tonight how she does it. But so Jatita, thank you so much for agreeing to participate on our Business Roundtable Showcase.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Nat. It's kind of hard to say no to you. So anytime you extend an invitation, I'm here.
Well, I thank you very much for that. And I didn't mean to put you on, as they say, you've been voluntold or we're going to arm twist you or anything like that. But our roundtable in cooperation with the Howard County Library System really has been showcasing women entrepreneurs. We're not discriminating to the men, but we're basically focusing the last several months on our women entrepreneurs. And knowing you and having met you, I kind of wondered, as we start on and you tell your story, how do you do it all? And particularly you being the CEO of the Consult Square Group. And we really want to kick it off in asking several questions, really. What made you decide to start this business? And the second question would be, what type of business do the Consult Group are involved in or is involved in? So why did you start it?
Yeah, thank you. It's a loaded question, and one that might take me a couple minutes to work my way on around the fence. But
sure,
bear with me. So I'm originally from Richmond, Virginia, which is about 2.5 hours south of Howard County, and I grew up around business owners. I grew up. My mother and my grandmother both were entrepreneurs, and I started working in the salon which my grandmother owned probably at the age of 10. I can remember, shampooing and drying, towel drying hair. And as I got older, I went to college, James Madison in Virginia, and transitioned post undergrad to work in the entertainment industry. So I started working for Black Entertainment Television after I graduated from college and worked there for about 3 years. Went to grad school for entertainment business at the University of Miami and was in Miami for about 4 years. I worked for a really large entertainment company while I was there. And I had a conversation with the owner of the company while I was working for him at a show. And I had a really, what I thought at the time was this really great idea that I was pitching to him. I was so excited at the time. I was like 24, 25 years old, and I was pitching this great idea to this big business entertainment tycoon. And I thought it was great, and he looked at me with no smile, no anything, and said, this is my company, and as long as it makes me money, I will continue to run it the way that I feel I need to run it. And I looked at him for a second and I said, okay, there were a couple things I took away from that conversation. Okay. One, I'm in the wrong place. I don't need to be working for this company. And two, he was exactly right. Because when you have your own business, you have the power to make those types of calls and those types of decisions. So it was at that point, which was a critical transition in my thinking, that I knew that whatever it was that I continued to do, I had to incorporate some type of ownership in that life for myself, not just for financial freedom, but also to build and continue a legacy that was so rich in my family. So I
you
started
were very much inspired by your grandmother and your mother.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. That those two have probably been the most influential my entire life. And I can tell stories about, you know, their drive, their, you know, growing the both of those businesses that they both had growing up, that really just captured my interest in having something that was mine, having something that I could leave to my children and to my family was extremely important to me in the same way that they kind of nurtured me in that environment. So it was always in my head. I knew I didn't want to do hair. That was one thing I took away. But but I did always have that desire to own a business, and even more so after that experience in Miami. And so when I was in Miami, I started a business called Blue Water Marketing. And it was a marketing company similar to Consult Square, but it was a Florida-based business. And then when I transitioned to Maryland, I changed the name to Consult Square.
Okay.
So the business is a marketing and market research corporation. We specialize in brand strategy and development. Post COVID, during COVID, we kind of launched a little pivot and also begun doing virtual event coordination, which is new to Consult Square, but I can say over the past 9-10 months, we've gotten really good at it. So, and I think it's something that, in my opinion, I don't think that we're never going to go back to the way things were before COVID, right? So there's always going to be a need and a component of some type of virtual option for people to attend events, for them to host events. So that, in my opinion, I think that adding that to our plate of services that we offer was a good move. And to your point that you were talking before we were on camera, that it gave you options to have new clients, new customers that you wouldn't have been able to touch and reach had you not been able to communicate with them virtually.
Yeah, and that I definitely agree with you on that. We would have our other business leaders on our roundtable discussions here, and that was one of the issues. Were you able, or are you able to pivot in this post-COVID or even during this? Because you look back at it now, here it's almost March, April rather, and when we look at a year, March 15th was probably in many cases, the official shutdown. We would never even know about these digital platforms prior to March. Now we're all into it. When we were talking off camera, it was Zoom, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, and WebEx. So
yeah, we're proficient at it now. We know all of it now. We know all of it. We know how to.
So you were able to make that pivot.
Yeah.
And how has that been in terms of you making that pivot now? Has it been a rewarding venture for your business lines, or what?
Yeah, so one thing to mention, and I'll throw this in here, and this will, probably make you wonder where I get all this extra time from, but I also am an adjunct professor at Coppin State in Baltimore. And I had been teaching virtually for Coppin. This will be my 9th semester. So this is even before COVID. I had still been working in a virtual environment for students that wanted that type of teaching. And of course, there are other universities. You have University of Phoenix and, the Maryland Eastern Shore, a lot of schools that are now offering virtual, of course, all of them now, but post-COVID, a lot of universities that were offering these virtual platforms. So I was familiar with virtual learning and virtual teaching and program delivery because I had been doing it for my students at Coppin. So I think that kind of gave me a little advantage when we did decide to offer virtual coordination, event coordination as a new feature for Consult Square.
So when you talk about now that whole hybrid, virtual and in person, who are some of the clients now that this new digital platform that you've been able to acquire now as a result of this?
Yeah, so we have most of our clients fall right in that mid range, meaning they're not the brand new startup businesses that are kind of looking to figure out what their company should be, right? So they're not in the ramp up phase. They're in a kind of medium space where they are they have a nice revenue that they're a marketing budget that they have set aside for that purpose, and they're looking to understand their clients better, which in the COVID environment has been really great because everyone now, or 5 or 6 months ago, we're trying to understand what the new woman or man, depending on what the company is, whatever their demographic is, or child, what they look like, what their avatar is. And how is it that they speak to them in a COVID environment, right? So a part of what we did as a company was to help them rethink and reimagine what that might look like in COVID and post-COVID. So it did give us, and I will be honest that prior to COVID, we were more of a Maryland, DC, Virginia type, and really thrived off of that personal touch, being able to drive to Virginia and have a meeting, drive to DC and have a meeting. But being able to have a conversation with someone in Hawaii, being able to have international conversations and meetings has really expanded my vantage as an entrepreneur, because there were some things in full transparency that in my head, I limited my own self and I limited my own corporation because I couldn't touch it. And I think that what the virtual environment did was allowed me to be able to go into someone's office virtually and have conversations that weren't awkward, that were, just as normal as sitting having coffee with a neighbor. And that opened up a lot of doors.
Yeah, I can imagine, because having been in the consulting business myself and being there for 20 years, making that pivot now has expanded our footprint, as we would say, not dealing primarily with the DMV, but people now are you finding through your research too, are people becoming more comfortable now in this whole digital medium, or as we say, this new normal, shall we say?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think people are very comfortable, and almost too comfortable, because you'll find on social media and things that people have gotten into a space of comfort where, everything is kind of shared and overshared, and, it's kind of hard to sift through some of, the content that is relevant and the content that is not. So for example, Nat, have you heard of the new platform called Clubhouse?
Yes.
So on Clubhouse, there are, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands, of different rooms that have, experts that are talking about a plethora of different topics, and a lot of them are entrepreneurial in nature. And I was having a talk last week. I was on Clubhouse with the head of supplier diversity for Papa John's. And I was sharing with her, it was maybe 20 people in our room. And then I looked at this other room that was, maybe thousands of people. And the people that were leading it were just, great people. But, I was sharing with her that there's so much knowledge that's in our room, but you can't really sift through all of the noise to make sense of who's real, who's legit, and who is, not, who's just kind of giving a lot of information that they, may have just made up or just they think is true. Whereas we're having we've both been in business. She obviously works for a very large corporation. And there's some really great information that's being shared in our room, but unfortunately there's only, 20 people, what's making it that it's not as sexy as every other room here. So, and I think that's what's kind of happened in this environment, is that when you are virtual, it's hard to tell what's legitimate and what's not. So a lot of, building brands is helping people to understand, in the creation of someone's brand, how to make your brand tell a story that is, that connects, that makes sense, and that's true to who you are and to what it is that your business actually does.
And from that standpoint, how do you tell a particular client when you're doing that brand marketing and all, how do you advise them to differentiate or to sift through, if you will, what's real and what's not real, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and if I understand you correctly, I think this is the honest truth, that it kind of boils down to how people react to what it is that is your client base going out? Are you you're going up? Are you generating revenue? Or are you just talking to a brick wall? It's some
Robin
people
want me to tell you that she was just walking the neighborhood.
There's sometimes that people will put, a lot of money. I have clients now I had one client who wanted to invest a lot of money in social media marketing. And for her business, the type of business that she had, she thought that it was extremely important to have a huge following. But what we had to work through is that her marketing and her target audience did not necessarily need to resonate with the people on social media that she thought she needed to attract. And it really and we tested it, and it really ended up being a drain on her budget because, there are a lot of businesses. I don't go to Twitter to find an accountant. I don't go to, Instagram to find
TikTok.
Right. There's some professions that it works, but it's not every single one. And I think understanding what works for your business, and definitely hiring Consult Square, we can help you to determine what avenue works best for your business in terms of branding and brand recognition. But social media and it doesn't work for every single business the exact same way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that, because when you're out here and you're seeing it now, particularly when we're home and you're watching the TV, you see the so-called influencers out there and the following on that, and you're seeing people now that the whole plethora of the social media. And to me, it was almost back 20 years ago when the whole rap scene came on, and everybody wanted to jump on that and said, oh, I can do that. Now the move is toward, let me be an influencer. How many people do I have following me? And so how do you, like you say, you got to sift through that. And you said it absolutely right. You got to determine as a business owner, what do you really want to brand in terms of your business as it relates to being an influencer and having followers, and trying to, in some cases, you can monetize that. In some cases, as you said, it's not for you.
Right. And I think there are levels to influencers, right? So you have influencers that have, millions of followers. You are hundreds of thousands of followers. And then you have micro influencers, which to me are like my fave, because they're more localized, they're more regional. I can tap into an influencer that may have 10,000 followers, 5,000 followers, that might be, in Maryland, Baltimore, even Howard County. And it might be worth more for me to get that person, get the, the net of the area, to say, go on his Facebook page and say, oh, I found this great accountant, or I found this great, hairstylist. If anybody's interested, here's her information. And from just that one testimonial from you, I might draw in five new clients. And that's what's called a micro influencer. So a lot of times it's as simple as that, tapping into people that have not these huge, if I hire, Beyonce to be, well, bad choice, because she could get mostly anybody to do anything. But if I were to, to hire someone and pay millions of dollars for them to get, to advertise, for them to say something about my bakery, which is located in Washington, D.C., the majority of the people can't reach Washington, D.C. So I've wasted a lot of money on this one person to speak to the world, when I don't need the world. I need people that are close to my bakery, or close to, my braid shop, or close to my gardening or flower shop. So what is it that you can get to micro influencers, as opposed to spending that much out of pocket for these mega influencers that can still generate revenue for your business? And I think being able to understand the difference and not getting caught up in the wave of social media and influence can help to strategize a little better when it comes to that.
Yeah, and you said that really, that one of the key words, like you said, strategize, where you get that business person. How do you get that business person now that has been so much in the weeds, that needs to think like you're saying right now, that 30,000 feet up, so to speak, as I always use the term? How do you help them to migrate up to that level?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I went to a conference a couple of years ago, and somebody referenced it. It's like a mindset. Do you want to stay an entrepreneur, or do you really want to be an entrepreneur? Because you can kind of stay in the weeds with it and just truck along and truck along and truck along. And literally, you're just trying to replace a 9-to-5 for a business. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing. But if your goal is to kind of take your business to the level where you are now hiring people, you are kind of growing this corporation, this larger business, then there needs to be some separation between the actual work of the business, the functional work that kind of brings in the revenue, and the organization of the business itself. And that's tough, because as a lot of times, if you are a solopreneur, it's hard to devote that extra time. And the organization of it all can really be a job in itself. Which is why a lot of people, outsource and hire and do those kind of things, because it takes a lot to manage some of the different functions of marketing, branding that are required to help and assist in growing your business. So it does take, but it takes consistency. One, being consistent in the types of steps that you're taking. So, for example, if a business owner says, well, I only have 2 hours that I can devote every week, then okay, we're going to work with that 2 hours every single week, but we have to be consistent with that 2 hours. And once that business starts to see the result of their 2 hours, once they start to see the result of, okay, I can work a little bit less in the business and put a little more of the structure together, it'll allow me that free time to be able to invest more time. And then that's when you're able to start hiring people to kind of replace the work that you were doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Let me ask you another question in here. Since now, how long have you been in business here in Howard County? And that'll give me another segue to my next question.
So Consult Square has been in business since 2019.
Okay. And with that being said, what are some of the challenges that you face now bringing the business from, let's say, Miami to South Florida, back up here to Maryland? What has been some of the challenges that you faced? Or are there any?
Well, yeah, I would be very, very dishonest if I said there were not. But I think a lot of times my limitations are really self-imposed. Because when I find that when I truly want something, when I go after, a client and I put the effort into it, I'm able to reap the rewards. So I will say that the transition from Florida, I thought the environment in Florida was a lot tougher. Because there were, several barriers for me, even though my last name is Hernandez, I don't speak Spanish, which was a huge barrier in South Florida when 90%.
Yeah, I could imagine that, right?
Yeah, speak Spanish. So, my Spanish is very rusty. So that was a huge barrier. So coming to this area was more of a freedom. However, there are certain challenges that I will say kind of accompany a lot of business owners, particularly those of color and females, that there are certain barriers that are in place because of either systematically or whatever the case that kind of limit the networks, the resources that we have. I will share this with you. I was very intentional when I started the business to get connected with the community. And the first step that I made, I was on the Howard County government website, and I was looking for opportunities to like get connected because I really didn't know a lot of people. And this was even before, this was maybe 2016, that I was was on the MLK Commission for Howard County. And I got to know a lot of people within the Howard County government, and, you know, between the African American Roundtable and just joining other organizations and really understanding who the people are, it really helped me to navigate the resources that were out in this community for my business. And also to seek the help and, you know, that facilitated some of the growth for my business.
Sure. So you would definitely recommend for even people who are here that are starting their own business, that this would be one of the steps that they can really take on, is to really network and build those relationships within the county or the state that they're operating from.
Yeah. And, you know, and networking is a very loaded word too. And I tell people, you know, when you think about networking in your head, network for nothing. You know, don't network with the intention of, I want something from someone. I want to get to know this person because I want them to give me a contract, or I want them to hire me, or I want them to do this. Network for nothing, meaning you want to engage with people so that they know who you are, what you do, you know them, and you can leave it there. You can continue to kind of foster that relationship. And if things organically kind of lead to a business relationship where you're able to collaborate, where you're able to partner, then that's great. But a lot of times, I know I get asked a lot to help, to offer, if I had a 5 cent for every time someone asked me, can I pick your brain? Can I take you out for coffee? Yeah, I'd probably, have a $5 million house somewhere. Because I think a lot of people, they want to have those conversations, but what the real question is can you help me do this? And what they don't understand is that I may not have the time necessarily to devote to me personally helping you do something, but maybe if I know you and I know what you do, 5 days from now, 5 weeks from now, 5 months from now, I might meet someone, and this happens a lot, and I'll say, oh, you know what? I know Cynthia, or I know Kate, and she does this. Let me connect you with that person. And I think planting those seeds, intentionally planting those seeds for them to reap and for that to grow organically has been really, really helpful.
Well, I always say that in one sense, you've described the example of how we met.
Yes.
Because it was basically through networking. We both served on the economic transition of the county executive, and that was several years ago.
Yeah, it sure was.
So I do agree with you. It was definitely a network that we connected, but I share with you, we definitely didn't have the idea, well, I want to pick your brain, you want to pick mine. It was a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the critical thing, is building that relationship. So when we do have an opportunity to reconnect, which we have, it can be on a mutual basis, and we can share ideas, and who knows what happens after that. But I totally agree with you. If you go in there with that intention, you're going to really fail. And
right.
Just because people can see through that, I think.
Yeah, it's not genuine. It's not genuine at all.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. The other piece that I wanted to really, you got the Consult Square group, but really what caught me also was Card My Yard.
Yeah.
That really got me going. I said, wait a minute now. Jathita I knew you had the marketing background, but when I saw Card My Yard, so Franta, you really got to explain us what's that all about, because I'm excited about hearing about that.
Yeah. So right in the middle of COVID, right in the middle of the summer, my husband and I decided to buy a franchise. And the parent company, which is out of Austin, Texas, we had seen these signs kind of all over Howard County, all over Maryland, really. And even on TV, people in people's yards, even more so during COVID, where people couldn't leave, they would have these, yard signs, happy birthday, happy graduation, any occasion that you can think of. So the franchise, we researched it, talked to the company, and decided to purchase it. Again, we thought that it was a great opportunity, being that it was the middle of COVID and we knew everybody was going to be home for at least another year, that we could tap into something that we knew would be needed. And I can tell you, it has been one of the biggest, blessings that I could say we added to our little family enterprise, because it just has given so much joy to the community, so much joy to the county. We go as far north as we've gone to Randallstown. We try not to go too far into Baltimore because it takes a while to get out there and back. But, we go to Olney, we go to, all over Howard County, obviously, and then some parts of Anne Arundel County. But it has been such a good time. It's something that for the most part, our entire family can do when we have the time. We're actually onboarding a few employees this week, so we're excited about that it's grown so quickly. But yeah, it has been great. And I brought one of my little friends, one of my signs that this is my spirit sign that and she's most popular obviously for little girls' birthday parties, but she kind of reminds me of my daughter and myself as like a little brown superhero. So I like to keep her in my office from time to time. But yeah, these are our signs. This is one of our smaller ones. Obviously, they get pretty tall. But yeah, it's been great.
So you make those here at your home, or what? Tell me.
So the signs so the signs are actually printed in Texas at the parent company. Okay. And then they will ship them to us, and we get shipments probably weekly of different, new signs that we've added. But anything that you can think of, any color that you can think of, we can create something really special and memorable for your yard. We've done just in this week alone, we've done a few schools that are opening back up this week. So just to see, on Facebook, I'll just be scrolling through my timeline and see people's children who probably have no idea that I'm connected with Card My Yard, and their kids are taking pictures at school in front of the sign. So it's really just a joy for the community and for my family as we grow this business.
That is fantastic. I know when I looked at it, it said Card My Yard, and I went on the website, I said, oh my goodness. Is she making these signs at home in the garage or what?
I don't know. You might be speaking something up, Nat. That might be a printing business. That might be a good pivot for post-COVID.
Well, look, it definitely is something. When I looked at it on the website, and I invite people to look at your company, both of them, on your website. It does bring joy, because I really got a great laugh, and it was not a laugh at the company, but laugh at the signs of saying, hey, this is not bad to have. And I'm thinking about my granddaughters and all. I said, okay, yeah, this is not too bad. Absolutely. Yeah. So you found that niche. And like you said, since everyone's home, you can put it in the yard. And particularly now that it's getting warmer and people are out and about, hey, why not? So, but I'm going to flip back to, you were there, you got your Consult Square group, and now with Card My Yard. What's the thought process now? Where do you go from here? What's the next move that Jathita Hernandez and company, what's your next step? Because you teach other people the growth. What's the growth for your company?
Yeah, so I always share with people that my goal was never to have a marketing consulting business. It was never to have a yard carting business. My goal, my overall goal and dream for myself and my family was to create legacy and create wealth within our immediate family. Mm-hmm. So it has never been, married to any specific business. It's always been with this greater picture in mind, that whatever it is that we are doing, or that I am doing, is somehow contributing to my legacy that I would leave to my kids and to myself, or to their kids. We have my son. He's 13. He has a apparel company that he started, Be More Apparel. And he also started an investment group with David. You know David.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And so they've been going strong for like a year now, and it's about 5 young boys that are in that investment group, all under the age of 14, all 13 years old. And it's all about kind of learning the steps to be financially independent and financially free. And to me, you can create that whether or not you have one business, multiple business, whether or not you work a 9 to 5. If you have that goal that this is, I want to create this for myself and my family, that is what will drive you to get there. And that has surely driven me to, everything that has come my way. So when you ask what is next, I just kind of go where I feel the opportunity is. I have a master vision in my head. I can't share that with you quite yet, Nat, for next year, but stay tuned.
I will.
But just know it's all going to be kind of tied into that one
Sure.
overarching theme. Yeah.
Well, you've talked about really setting that legacy for your family and particularly your children and your children's children. So I guess I could piggyback in asking you the same question, but in a different context. What words of wisdom or ideas or suggestions would you have wanting to give people, our listening audience here, we're recording this, what words of wisdom or just thoughts that you would want to pass on to present and future business owners?
Yeah, I would say, especially to new business owners, that it's important to understand what the vision is for your life, for your overall life. What is your life goal? And once you get in alignment with all of the different pieces of your life and the direction that it's going in, I think building a business kind of works inside of that, right? So I've met with so many people that are, working a 9 to 5, and they beat themselves up repeatedly because they, I can't get out of this. I want to start this business, but I can't get out of this 9 to 5. And sit down, let's talk about your life goal. Because if you can understand and commit to, okay, 5 years, I'm going to do this 9 to 5. I'm going to save 20% of my income so that I can afford to get my business off the ground in 5 years. Then I will start my business, and then, so on and so on. But it takes you understanding the trajectory of your life in order to be at peace with the fact that you might not be able to do everything you want to do right at this second. So that takes patience, and it takes a little dedication to your life plan. And I say that from experience, because I was so frustrated, with, working a 9 to 5, trying to figure out where I was going, what business was going to work for me. And it wasn't until I slowed down and said, okay, let's be more strategic about your entire life. Your main goal, let's go backwards and figure out how we build these stepping stones for you to hit your goals. Because as long as you're frustrated in growing your business, you're going to keep spinning your wheels. You have to kind of understand that this is where I am. These are the pieces to the puzzle that I need to put in place to get here. And for me, I know it just always seems to work better when I have a roadmap that I'm following, and that I know I have a plan to get there, as opposed to just kind of spinning and in frustration of not kind of knowing what the future holds.
Yeah, and you mentioned that roadmap, and I'm looking at the chat over here too. One of the questions was, do you give yourself deadlines for success? What's that roadmap? If you on that road, do you give yourself, after a certain time to being on that road, if you haven't accomplished certain things, do you stop? Do you continue?
So I guess for me, if it is a true goal and something that I have assigned as a must-have in life, then I won't stop. If it's it's just kind of a dream deferred. So I will push it back, a year or a month, or however long it is, in order for me to continue to pursue it. I think for business purposes, If there is, say, for example, a contract that I'm pursuing and I get told no, or I get, then obviously those are hard no's. But if it's under the umbrella of my control, meaning I can control actually hitting that goal, then I'm going to keep pursuing it. But obviously, if it's something that, I get told no, then I need to come back, and rework and then come back again.
Okay. Looking at the chat here, Jathita, we've got a question coming. What do you use to build your roadmap strategy? Is it a document spreadsheet, or even talking to a mentor or whatever? But what's that roadmap as you mapped out to your success and your strategy?
Yeah, the first time I did it, it was really just a big piece of butcher paper. So if you can imagine on this wall, just a big piece of butcher paper that I actually, was writing out almost like a real map, the things that were important to me. And then I was able to craft that into a digital version that I use with my clients. So it's more, the platform that I'm able to use it on is very interactive. So just like I'm sitting here having a conversation with you, Nat, we can have a square in here that I can actually type in your roadmap. You can type in your roadmap. We can move it around. We can set dates. We can set goals. We can set when they are to be accomplished, things like that. So it can be as simple or as as technical as that. But I think either whatever works with your personality and kind of fits with how you jive and what speaks to you, I think it's fine. I think another way that people have done it is through the vision boards. That's another common way to kind of map out what it is in a particular year or a particular time that you want to accomplish something, that you put out all of those different pictures and things. But just think for that life plan, it's really kind of chiseling down. You have a picture of a house on your vision board. Think of the life plan as more of, okay, here's the house. This is the ultimate goal, but what has to be done to get there? And those are the things that you have to identify in the life plan so that you really have a step-by-step tool that you can use on a daily basis to help get you to those places that you want to go.
Yeah, I agree with that, because when you were saying that, I was thinking about the years that I've been in business, and I tell some of my clients, each business that you're in has a life cycle, so to speak, or business cycle. And generally speaking too, I think, and would you agree, that this COVID has changed a lot of that because of that platform now, the digital platform, where historically for me, it would be January, February that I would really use that as my research and development cycle. Let me see what I've done in the past, what I need to fine tune, and then look at the future. Do you see things like that being utilized in your business or your counseling to your clients, that type of thing?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think that it has affected a lot of people differently. But, to your point, I think that it like you said, that you have the seasons of, kind of high tide and low tide.
Correct.
There are a lot of businesses that operate very similarly and have been impacted very similar. And then there are others that the pivot has really allowed them to be what's it called? 4 seasons, where there are some businesses that may have been, only able to operate in 2 or 3 seasons and taking that, but because of the virtual environment, it has opened up, their 365 business. And unfortunately, there are others who has gone in a totally different direction, because there's almost, there are certain industries that have been hit a lot harder, hotel industries, airlines, restaurants, tourism, that they're looking for ways to kind of reimagine how they generate revenue, especially because they want to keep on employees that have families and livelihoods to support. So they're really looking at ways to kind of come back in a model that accommodates kind of both of these worlds. Because I think even if they say, and I believe on CNN, I heard earlier today that they are giving the end of April or May, when they suspect that most of Americans will have their vaccine. And I don't just think that there's going to be a switch that flips back on and we're just all of a sudden going to be, hey, we're free. I think it's going to be more of a, a gradual thing. Like you said, you're not going back out until 2022.
Right. That's true. In my arena now, talking to some of the major clients out there that I have a relationship with, many of them are saying we're not going back in terms of full where we were pre-COVID until at least 2022. And there's companies here in the state of Maryland and nationwide that have made that pitch right now that we're not thinking about bringing our employees back to 2022. And even then it's going to be a different mindset, a hybrid. So those things are happening in there.
Yeah.
Another question that we have over here, Jathita, too, is you being so busy, how do you manage your time?
So I read this book about 6 years ago. It was called the 4-Hour Work Week. And it was the author of the book. He talked about how he transitioned his 80-hour-a-week job that he essentially hated into literally working 4 hours a week. And so he talked about strategies that allowed him to cut time, that allowed him to devote time to his own business, to where he got to the point of literally shaving off, hours of his day that he used to spend at work, that he could focus on other things, whether that was travel or his own business or whatever. So after I read that book, and that's really kind of what fostered my life plan, was reading that and taking away a few, essential tidbits that kind of spoke to me that I could implement easily into my life to give myself more time. And some of the things are, as small as the amount of times that I go to the mailbox, during a given week, the amount of times that I open mail, where there's a dedicated day and time that the mail gets opened. There's a dedicated time of day that emails get opened and that I respond. There's a dedicated, so being able to compartmentalize a lot of things that sometimes we just do and don't really think about how much time we spend doing them. And I don't know if iPhones are the only ones doing this, but I know my iPhone will tell me every week the average time I spend on my phone.
On the phone, right?
Yes,
right.
yes. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I cannot believe, you think it's 3 hours, say 3 hours a day for 7 days a week. That's 21 hours out of a week that I have spent on my cell phone. And what could I have done with 21 hours?
Right. Right.
And so things like that is what he talked about in the book, how to kind of cut some of these things that you don't even realize you're giving your time to, even to meal prepping on 1 day a week. So to save yourself time, and I have 2 children, one 13 and one 4. And I still am, have to be, that's my number one job. So I still have to be 100% every single day to make sure I do that job at my, my top capacity. What I found is being able to kind of compartmentalize and shave down some of those non-necessity things that I was doing really helped for me to stay organized and to give me some of my time back. And once you're, accustomed to it and you have a little regimen with not checking your mail every day, for some people, it might drive them crazy. But to me, I'm just used to it. And I apologize to my mail lady because I can see her by the end of the week trying to squinch in like one little letter because it's gotten so, I'm like, sorry, I don't check it till tomorrow, because you don't think about the amount of, for me, if I were to check it, the amount of time it takes me to open it, the amount of time it takes me to respond to something, as opposed to me dedicating a fixed day of the week, a fixed time that I open, read, respond. And then that's it for the week. And then I come back to it the following week. So there are a lot of those kind of micro things that are in our lives that we're sometimes don't really even know how much real time we're investing in them, that I was able to get back and then reinvest into other things like card my yard.
Right, right. Well, I got to give a plug in here because Nancy and her team put down here the 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy, I guess at Ferris. Yeah,
Yes.
Timothy is available at the library. So, hey, a plug,
Yes.
please, if you're interested
Yes.
in the book, our Howard County Library has it available. Thank you, Nancy and team.
And Nancy, do you have the audio book? Because if people don't have time to read it, they can listen to it while they're cooking or
Well, you know, you talked about something, Jathita, that really I think most entrepreneurs may lack is that discipline. That discipline in terms of what you just said. There's going to be a time that I'm going to devote to this, and that's it. That specific time. I go back to even our business roundtable. I've said to people, we're disciplined enough that we meet every third Friday at 11 a.m. And we've been doing that now for the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. So we try to keep it between 11 and 1, that 2 hour. Now, sometimes we're shorter than that, which is great, but we don't go over. But that's the other thing that I found that really some of our business clients that I have, and maybe you've experienced it too, is that we don't discipline ourselves in terms of carving out that time. And we think that we've got to, let me get to that next email. Let me get to that next this. And you're right. As a quick example, I only visit my office, which is a UPS post office box that I call my suite, but I only go there once a week.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the discipline that I have. I don't want to spend the time getting in the car, driving out there to that and back. And the same way with the mail. If I get the mail, it's a certain time. So I totally agree with you. That's where some of that internal discipline that we as entrepreneurs have got to have in running our business and not being in our business. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, my friends and even my husband, he laughs at me because I wake up extremely early. And that's another thing that I did to begin to capture more of my time. I wake up very early before my kids wake up. And that's when I respond to emails, is early, first thing in the morning. And then I'll, at the end of the day, I'll respond as well.
So what time in the morning do you wake up, if we may ask?
It's pretty early. I would say the first time I wake up, because I usually get up a few times before I actually get out of bed. But the first time I wake up is probably around 4:30. And then I'm usually out of the bed down here in my office by 6 o'clock. So when I come down, you know, that's the first thing I do. I try not to, and I'm bad at this. I try not to pick up my phone while I'm in my bedroom, and try to wait until I get downstairs before I start to communicate with anyone or to, you know, and it's still kind of tough because sometimes I'll find myself grabbing it and, you know, you're just kind of seeing what you missed in the middle of the night, usually nothing, but, you know, it's just kind of, the natural thing to do. And then, you know, by the time I get down here, I respond to emails. And the good thing about that is that no one is usually up to respond back to me. Yes. So I don't have to wait for someone to, you know, I'm usually good, you know, until like 1 o'clock. By that time, I can come back and I can see all of these responses. And now it's like, okay, here's the second opportunity to go back and, you know, to communicate with people. But yeah, to your point, it does take definitely some organization and, you know, just being consistent with whatever ritual or whatever it is that you put in place, just like your meetings, that you dedicate yourself to attending the meeting, you know, if it's attending a training or, you know, whatever it is that you find to be helpful that will keep you kind of in your groove or in your flow. I think that definitely will help.
Well, that's great. I've got one question in here, and I hope it's a humorous as well as a serious question. The question has Oprah called you yet?
Ooh.
That's what I said. So So we're waiting for that Oprah call then, Theda.
Not yet. You know what was funny? When I was in grad school at the University of Miami, my claim to fame is that I always would say I am within 6 degrees of separation from anybody. I can find or get in contact with anyone. And people would challenge me, well, oh, can you get in touch with this person? It would be somebody so, far-fetched that they would never think that I would be able to get in contact with. And then within like 2 hours, I'll be like, oh, I told you, and I might not be talking to them, but I have connected with at least, someone who could get me into connection with her. She was one of the people that I was challenged to get in contact with, and I couldn't. It is
Really?
something to this day that I am not within 6 degrees of Oprah Winfrey. So that's like a goal. So if anybody can make that happen, that would be awesome.
So we are throwing the challenge down now that, okay, one of your ultimate goals is to make sure that you connect with Oprah.
Yes. I have gone to her studio. I've gone to her studio though in Chicago.
Okay. All right. Well, that counts. That counts.
Yes, it counts. It counts.
Are there any questions we're looking at now in the chat room? Okay, Oprah. If you know Oprah or anyone else, would you like to be a guest at our roundtable in the future? Yeah, let us know. That's true. I agree. Jathita, any closing remarks that you may have for us, particularly as it relates to our women in business here in Howard County? What closing remark would you want to have?
Again, thank you so much, Nat. Thank you to Ujima for inviting me. Thank you to Howard County Library System. Definitely for women in business, and this is a plug to an organization that I sit on the board of. I believe Laura's on the call. The Third is an amazing organization in Howard County for women of color who are in business, helping to provide resources, as well as the exposure and the networks and the connection in order to grow your business in size and scale. There are many other ways, I think, within the county, state, staying connected to HCED, the Economic Development Council, and also just getting to know people in your community that would benefit from either knowing you directly or being connected to your business. And also, I always ask for people to send me an email or connect with me on social media, because as I mentioned to Nat, I have a really, really sharp memory. And I won't give my age, but for my age, I feel like it's still sharp. It's still sharp. So I very frequent, I will meet people, and because I remember that I met someone who does this or met someone who does that, I'll be able to connect them very, very easily and very quickly. Just earlier today, a friend of mine in South Carolina sent me an email and asked for if I knew anyone who had like goods and services that they would sell in a hospital, because a hospital is one of her clients in North Carolina, and a friend of mine makes candles. And I said, here's her number. And they were able to connect. And that's like now a new client of the hospital system in North Carolina. And she lives right here in Columbia. So, I like to do those things because, for one, I like to help other women in business to grow and to realize that they are, they could be just as big as they want to be. So please connect with me, my email address, jhernandez@consultsquaregroup.com. My hashtags, or what is it called? My y'all know.
Okay.
The hashtags. Handle. Yes, the handle is Mrs. Jathita, MRS Jathita on Instagram and Facebook, and then of course Carve My Yard and Consult Square are their true names.
Fantastic. Well, it's that time now, Jathita. Time flies when you're having fun.
It sure does.
I really thank you very much for being our guest here today, and for our audience, this is being recorded. Nancy and her team will definitely let you know via email when this recording will be available for you. And I invite you again to tune in, as they say in TV land, TV talk. Tune in next month, the fourth Tuesday of the month. We'll have another entrepreneur here in Howard County sharing her ideas. So I said her, so you know it's going to be another lady. Her ideas and her business here in Howard County. So Jathita, again, thank you on the behalf of the Howard County Library System and also the Ujamaa Business Roundtable for being our guest here tonight.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Piali, can you turn off the recording?